Hi, Ruby. Sorry about the microphone, it's not very good. I'm just going to show you how to set up the preferences on the decoplanner and how to use the most basic functions of the decoplanner. Of course, to really understand decoplanner, you have to read the manual. So please remember that this is not a complete guide to using decoplanner, and you shouldn't trust it to plan dives, for liability reasons. Okay, so the first thing is we've got the screen here, but then in the top left hand side you've got the file system, and if you go down through the file system, you can't actually see this, but I'm going down through the file system until I get to dive plan preferences. Okay, and then you want to open it. Okay, so we've got it open just here, and there's tabs. So the first tab is general, then bottom gas, deco gas, Bullman, which is where we set gradient factors. Then there's VPM and VPM altitude if you're using the V-planner, which we're not. We're using the Bullman algorithm, right? So let's have a look first at general. We have the descent rate. We want to set that maximum speed 20 meters a minute. Explain to your divers a slow descent rate will probably give less narcosis, right? Range increment, don't need to change that. If you want to understand what it is, again, read the manual. CNS half time, 90 minutes. What does this mean? It means that every 90 minutes after a dive, we're metabolizing, we're using oxygen, and our CNS oxygen is dropping after a dive. You can change this. If you want to change it, go online and read about CNS half times. But for us, we don't need to change anything. And then you have the choice of choosing Bullman tables or VPM. We're using Bullman, okay? And then finally, ascent rate. Most people are using 9 meters a minute, so no need to change it. Bottom gas. This is where you set your breathing rates. So for example, here it's set for 18 meters a minute. Normally we set the breathing rate for the highest person in the group, which is maybe Dan. So we don't need to change that. Cylinder volume. This is the volume of both tanks. Now we can't put 22.4, so we're just putting 22 liters for the two tanks. Cylinder working pressure is the full tank, 200 bar. And here, if you want, you can set a reserve. Now, I'm not setting a reserve because I prefer to calculate the reserve myself. Then finally, we have oxygen percentage and helium percentage. You can change this in the dive planner itself. This is just what the planner will use if you don't tell it that you're using another gas. Deco gas, again, you can set the highest breathing rate here. Well, let's set 18 liters a minute for Dan. Tank size, well, it's not 6 liter, it's about 5.5 liter if you're using the small tank, and about 11 liter if you're using a big tank. A full tank, working pressure is 200 bar. Reserve, I'm going to calculate it. And then you can check or uncheck standard gases. And I'll show you how that affects the planner in a minute. But basically, just leave it set for use standard gases, and for our course we can set 50%. Finally, Bullman. Surface pressure, you only need to change this if you're doing altitude diving in a mountain lake. We don't need to change that. But we do need to change the gradient factor low and high. So we're going to use 45% gradient factor low, 75% gradient factor high. As I said, VPM, you don't need to change because we're not using VPM, we're using Bowman. So we then apply. Now everything's safe. Okay, now I had this window open before I changed the gradient factor, so I'll just change that to 45%. So we have 4 areas. We have the area here where you, in the top left, where you plan your dive. In the center is where you set your deco gases. On the right, it tells you how much gas you're going to use and what size tanks you need to carry. And then, of course, at the bottom here, it plans the dive for you. It gives you depth, time, the gas that you're using. It has runtime if you want to use runtime, partial pressures. SCR is another word for SAC or RMV, so that's the breathing rate you've set. So again, if you've set the wrong breathing rate, people can see here that it's been set too high or too low. Gas required. This calculates exactly how many liters at every stop you're going to use. Gradient factor shows how the gradient factor starts and ends. The percentage of N value is how close you're getting to the limit. And the CNS percentage and the oxygen percentage, right? What do we actually really need to look at? Well, primarily we need to make sure we have enough gas, number 1. Number 2, the total CNS, that's important. Number 3, all the stops that we have to do. And then finally, on the bottom left, you can see the dive time and total deco time. And of course, if it's a very long dive, that's going to affect how cold we get, right? So before you show your students how to plan a dive with decoplanner, you do want to just show them generally what the information tells you. But there's a lot of information here that's not so important. Just show them what's the most important information to read. Okay? So imagine on Sunday, we're going to do a 35-meter dive. So I can come to the top left and I can put in 35 meters. Then I can add the time at that depth, let's say 15 minutes. And you see the software has automatically set 21%. You can change that if you want. So you can just type in here 22, 23%. If you're doing a multi-level, you can then add the second level. Let's say 25 meters for another 15 minutes. Now we want to set our deco gases. There's 2 ways of doing this. The first way, you click on the box and drop down and choose 21 meters from the option. Now you can't see it, but I have a drop down box here. It's just not showing right now. And then it automatically sets 50%. Now, for example, if the whole team only has 47%, you can change that to a 47 if you want. So it will automatically set 50%, but you can change it to anything. If you were using oxygen, you choose the 6-meter drop down, and again, it's automatically made it 100%. So for our dive, we're going to choose 50%. Okay, now we're ready. We can plan the dive. Most important, gas. Tank size 22 liter. We're going to use 100 bar of gas, so it's on the right side. This is where you show divers, rather than setting a reserve, we're going to calculate our reserve. So we're going to use 100 bar, so the minimum gas to carry would be 150 bar, so times 1.5. Then we have the deco gas here, and you can see the percentage there, 50%. You look at the deco gas here, we're going to use 30 bar. So wherever possible, we try to carry double the deco gas. So 30 times 2, 60 bar minimum. You can show your students that the total OTU for pulmonary toxicity is 27 OTUs, but really at this level of training we don't care about pulmonary oxygen toxicity. We only care about central nervous system oxygen toxicity. And if we look at that, this column shows you how it increases during the dive, and we're finishing with 10% oxygen exposure, so that's okay. So now we just need to write down the stops, and if you come to the left, we have 35 meters for 15, 25 for 15, 21 for 1. As we talked about, we extend this to be 2 minutes long. At 18, 15, 12, and 9, there are no stops required. So you could go slowly up to 6 meters, directly to 6 meters. Usually in training, we add 18 meters, 15, 12, and 9, just for 1 minute. Not required stops. It's just really a very slow ascent, say 3 meters a minute, coming up to 6 meters. Then we have 2 minutes at 6 meters and 7 minutes on the final stop. As we talked about, that final stop is supposed to be at 3 meters, but actually any depth between 6 and 3 is okay. So commonly we're doing our final stop at 4.5 or 5 meters. The final thing we'd like to show them is the dive time and deco time. So if we go to the bottom left, you see that the total dive time is only 42 minutes. So right now we're not going to get cold. That affects our exposure protection. And total deco time is 11 minutes. As we spoke about, when you're teaching this course, there's no recommendation for how much deco you do. But by the end of the course, I don't like to be doing much more than 20, 25 minutes of deco. Once the deco starts to get longer than that, really, you're going into extended range dives, and you really want to get them to do extended range diving. The final box is the box here, maximum stop depth, 15 meters. This tells you that with the gradient factors that you've set, any depth, any stop deeper than 15 meters, you're continuing to on-gas. Starting at 15 is where you start to off-gas. So that's quite useful when you're adding stops which are not required, like we are in training. Actually adding an 18-meter stop is maybe not such a good idea. But adding a 15, a 12, and a 9, certainly when we're breathing 50% nitrox, shouldn't really be a big problem. Okay. Lots of other buttons, need to read the manual, but this button, Next Dive. If we click Next Dive, this is the repetitive dive. Again, I can make it bigger. So now we're on the second dive. Surface interval, let's make it 2.5 hours. So I've set the surface interval up here. And now you can plan the repetitive dive the same as you did the first dive. And then you can plan a third or fourth dive as well. So it's fairly easy to use. There's lots of information, probably more information than we need. So give a good overview of how to use the decoplanner and how to set preferences. Certainly tell your students to really understand all the functions of this planner. They need to read the manual, and if they have any questions, they should ask you, which of course means that you need to have read the manual too. I hope this helps. See you on Saturday.